Hey guys, Dylan from the Geek Duo here, and today I'll be bringing you My Hero Academia Chapter 299 read-through. Now, this chapter is another technically filler between the arcs because technically according to the My Hero Academia wiki, we still haven't started a new arc. Because Chapter 298 and 299 were marked down as Paranormal Liberation Front War arc. Which is interesting to me because it feels like we're at the start of a recovery arc, not still in the war. Anyway, this chapter is also one that a lot of people in the fandom have been wanting for a while now. Ever since this character was introduced, we've wanted his backstory, and I am happy to say that we finally have the full backstory of Hawks. Now, this one's going to be an interesting chapter for me to voice because, well, A, I don't have a set voice for Hawks yet, and B, even if I did, I have to do 4 different voices for Hawks because there's the voice in his mind, which is the narration for this chapter. There's him as a child. There's 2 other voices that I'll get to once we actually are explaining the parts of the chapter that they will relate to. So the chapter starts off immediately with the flashback, and it's got a couple television screens. This is probably a scene where it's like one TV screen flies across the screen showing one image, then another follows it, and another. You know how they do those montage scenes in shows. And on each screen there's a different hero. And we have Hawk say, "The world of heroes that existed on my television screen. Growing up, I always thought of them as no more than fictional characters." We then see the outside of a rundown shack on what looks to be an abandoned farmland with a city in the background. And we see that Hawks didn't have the best home life, with his dad screaming, "Kago, what were you doing downtown? Did you think that you wouldn't get caught, you damn brat? What were you doing there, huh? Did you sell me out? Who did you sell me out to? Did you seriously think I wouldn't find out?" Hawks seems to quite regularly be yelled at by his father, which, as we know, is a criminal. And so this is after he'd done the majority of his crime, when he's laying low from the police and everything. My wings were tingling. It felt like there was an incident in the town. But it was nothing, so I just came back. No one saw me. "Stop lying, you... Don't mingle with the humans. Don't you dare leave this house." "Honey, the television, it isn't turning on." "What? Who cares?" "Honey, please don't leave again. Find me my next gig already." We see that Hawks' mother, she does nothing to stop, well, I don't actually think we know his first name, so we don't, the villain Takami, from yelling at their son, other than seemingly she does distract him. She's a difficult character to place because she's judging by the bottles of wine next to her and the cans of beer that are littering the room. I'm going to say she's somewhat of an alcoholic, but there are scenes where she acts like she doesn't care about Hawks. There's these scenes where she distracts the father from yelling at him by turning his attention to something else and then him storming out. And there are scenes where she does seem to be genuinely parenting, at least in some senses of the word. So she's a very hard character to pin down. Also, initially the circles around her, we see a couple in this scene and later we see more. I thought these were just like in shows to show that a character is drunk, how they have the hazy bubbles floating around them. But no, I'm pretty sure these have to do with her quirk, because they still show up in scenes where she's more cognizant or sober. Anyway, I was told that my father had been a hitman for hire. My mother helped my father avoid being captured, and I was born shortly after. Out of my way! Don't you turn your back on me! How many times have I told you this? Sorry. Relying on Tomei's quirk was a mistake. If only Tomei didn't deliver this mutt. If only this bastard had never been born. I'd be a free man. Honey, don't leave. The relationship between my mother and father was so strange that I suppressed my feelings and endured it all. He got caught. Huh? What do I do, Keigo? He got caught, attempting to steal a car and fleeing. By Endeavor, no less. This is obviously either the result of the villain Takami's... The night that he stormed out is when he got caught, or this is a flash forward a couple months. It doesn't actually give us any time for any of these scenes in the flashback, but obviously at one point after that night he got caught trying to steal a car by Endeavor. We knew Endeavor had caught him, but we didn't know exactly what for. Hawks walks into the room of and his mother when she's saying that he got caught by Endeavor, and Hawks, he looks shocked at the fact his dad is caught, and his narration says, at that moment, what was once fiction turned into reality. Heroes really do exist. And we get this cute little scene of the Endeavor plushie coming to life and jumping down to like lead Hawks on his path, because it's looking back over his shoulder and running with its arm forward. We need to run. She became panicked, frightened at the punishment of hiding my father. That day, my mother took me by my hand and led me away from our house. My mother, however, she didn't have the skills to keep herself afloat. So I tried to do the best thing. Let's go to the police. I don't care how you do it. Just get some money. You're his son after all. Why did I even have you? What are your wings even good for? We see that this is some time after Takami had been caught, as they're living at what appears to be like a train station or something. They're homeless, obviously, and the mother is obviously having, I forget the word, it's withdrawal, that's it. She's obviously having withdrawal from her alcoholism, and she's taking it out on Hawks, telling him to be like your father, get us some money so we don't have to live like this. However, that Hawks doesn't have to do that, because one day they're approached by two men in suits who say, your family won't want for anything going forward. We'll see to that, little guy. Family? Is there anyone else you see besides us here? Right then. In exchange for our full support, you will need to cut your ties to your life as Takami and live new lives. That's the end of the flashback, at least this first part of it. With those two men in suits, they're obviously from the Hero Commission, and this is when they adopt Hawks into the Hero Training Program, promising him that his mother will never have to want for anything if they cut their ties to the name Takami. We then jump forward to present day, where we see Hawks is not in good shape still. This is obviously, I'm going to say it's this 2 days after the breakout of Tartarus. Hawks he's got a breathing apparatus on his face. His head's still all bandaged like we last saw him, and he seems to constantly drift in and out of consciousness, because when he wakes up from this memory, we see that he's in the car with Best Jeanist. Best Jeanist notices that Hawks has woken up and he's like, "Hawks, thank goodness I wasn't sure whether you had passed out or kicked the bucket there. We've almost arrived." We see that Hawks in this state, he can't actually talk. So whether it's because of the mask on his face or the damage done by Darby, he can't talk yet. So he talked through his phone. "I'm sorry, slept like a log on you. It happens. If it hadn't been for Central's medical advancements, you'd likely still be at death's door by now. And I wouldn't have undergone that surgery that put me in that near-death-like state, inspired by those nerves. Thanks to that, my body is now like some ruined This is obviously some passive-aggressive comments on Best Jeanist's behalf, saying that because of the surgery that he went under to put him in the corpse-like state so that Hawks could show him to Darby, his body is ragged now. It likely won't return to what it was. Sorry again. I'm the kind of guy that commits to the act. Can't trick them with only half my heart in it. The guy who was able to create those Nomu was in hiding, so luckily the surgery was a success, and I delivered your body to Darby's doormat. He wanted to check that there really was a dead body. Since it was as real as could be, Darby full-heartedly agreed in your death, and I passed with flying colors. I had suggested storing you with other bodies, in case they felt the need to use your powers. That way you would have been preserved in a facility where air could reach. But really, you'd secretly be brought back to life at the right time. Hawks' explanation of his thought process there is interrupted by Best Jeanist, who looks out the side window of his car and then pulls his car into a very sharp turn, saying, "I've spotted some trouble." We see that a group of thugs are terrorizing this business street, and the big guy, who's obviously the leader, said, "It's time for a revolution. From now on, these shops are under the Binge Boy authorities." Best Jeanist, in his car, manages to shoot a couple fibers out of his window that instantly grab every one of these Binge Boys, and he pulls reference to two different people in this chapter, because as he's activating this, he says fiber on, which is obviously a reference to Human Torch with his flame on every time he activates his powers. Because he quickly dispatches of these three, binding them up and leaving them for the police to come get. And the gracious shop owner says, "Thanks, you saved my life. You'll have to excuse the disheveled manner in which I made this arrest. My body's seen better days. Where are the police or the local heroes?" "They won't come. The police are too busy dealing with the recent mass jailbreaks. And as soon as the heroes got all that criticism, they all closed up their agencies and ran with their tails between their legs." We hear a bystander on this make a comment saying, "Heroes and the likes don't exist." And we see that he was actually getting ready to apprehend these villains himself. This is obviously one of the retired heroes, because he's got a support item on his wrist. Obviously he was going to use his quirk in some way to apprehend them, and now he's trying to hide that under his apron and pull his shirt back down. But Best Jeanist notices, and he assures the shop owners that then my sidekicks will take care of this area. And he thinks, here too, huh? Meaning that this isn't the first area he's been to where the heroes have all given up their jobs. And I like that we see the onlooking crowd. Half of them are excited and happy that Best Jeanist is there and that his sidekicks will be looking after them. The other half are, well, they're pissed at the fact that a hero is there. We then jump ahead, I don't know how long, but they've arrived at their location. Is this it? Inside that house. Before I fully recovered and showed my face to everyone, there's something I need to be sure of. They walk into this modern looking house, and it's a very large house given the looks of the two of these guys when they're in the living room. And the only thing Hawks says when he walks in the building is, "Mum?" And he looks around with a sad expression. Best Jeanist asks, "Did she run away overnight?" But Hawks, he finds a letter on a nearby table. "Dear Kago, I'm sorry. Some scary man came to the house and threatened me, demanding I tell him about our family. So I told them everything about you and about your father. I'm truly sorry. I don't want to be a burden on your shoulders. I don't want that anymore, so I'm leaving. Take care. You make..." And then Hawks' thumb is covering the last two words, but given the fact that it seems to be covering, well, two words, and the last three letters of that second word are O-U-D, it's likely that she said, "You make me proud." And, well, this is a vast different opinion from the last time we heard her speak in this chapter. Hawks reads the note and says, "Did Darby use people for this? How did he even get this far?" "Takami Kago, say goodbye to this name from today forwards." "Guess it really was my mother that leaked it then." "That's rough, buddy. Like I always say, it's like skinny jeans. No, When the name Takami had been taken from me, the relationship between my mother and I had finally disappeared. I had always thought I was fine with that, but what I thought of as being saved was just me turning my back on everything. A guy who helps people. That's the only thing that returned. Actually, it's refreshing. It's not the sort of situation to be saying this, but the commission is currently at a standstill, in total dysfunction. There's no one to give me orders anymore. No chains left to shackle me down. We see that Hawks takes this breathing apparatus off, and his voice is very shaky and most likely gravelly due to the smoke damage on his vocal pipes and all vocal cords in his windpipe and all that. We get the final part of the flashback where he thinks to a day when him and his mother had gone shopping. Keep this a secret from him, got it? I was being noisy and begging to go outside, and in order to keep me quiet. Is this good enough? All Might's too expensive. You too. Be strong like this guy, okay? We see that this is the day that his mother bought him the Endeavour plushie. But that, son, when we're driven into corners, we find liberation. And that's where a person's true nature rears its head. That's why Pupa Gawara was such a great guy. At heart, he was desperate to be a help to others. I also want to be like that. He thinks back to what his mother said to him, what are your wings even good for? As he's thinking on these words, he remembers the day, likely the day the commission came for him, where he was out with a shopping bag, possibly full of stolen things, and he saves a group of people from the accident. We'd actually heard about him doing this before, but we see that this is a 2-car and 1 truck crash. Like one car went head on into the truck and the truck tail spun into the 3rd car, but before anyone got damaged by this, Hawk sends out all of his feathers to save the people. Likely the first time he's used his quirk in this way. And the last thing we see from this is him hugging his Endeavour plushie. The final page is back in modern day, and Hawk says, even if what Darby said about the Todoroki household is true, I'm sure it's not like that now. So what are you going to do? I have to settle this, even if it kills me. And the first step is at my beginning. Endeavor-san is in trouble. We see that Hawks is likely going to take to the media, probably with Best Jeanist as well, to bring forth the hero's side of Darby's tale. I don't reckon it'll do as much good as he thinks it will, but we see that's likely what he's going to, at least part of his plan. We also see that in this final panel, Hawks' quirk isn't actually gone, because the back of his jacket, it's got 2 very noticeable bulges where his shoulder blades would be, or more where his wings are, showing that Darby didn't burn them off completely. that, or he was able to, even though the actual nubs of the wings that remain when he sends out all his feathers, even though those had been burnt off, he was able to heal the wings fully. Which means that there's probably no way to actually kill his quirk factor, his mutation factor, without a quirk destroying bullet. It's unlike Ojiro, where if you cut off his tail, he no longer has access to it. Hawks, you'd actually have to destroy his quirk factor to be able to get rid of his quirk. Now this was... You can see now why I said this was filler chapter, because we don't really go over much modern day time. It's over like an hour max, and most of it is just dialogue, but it does give some world building as well as the backstory for Hawk. The world building being that in just 2 days a lot of hero agencies, well, the smaller hero agencies, have shut down because of the backlash that heroes have been getting. And well, we saw the guy at the end of the war who said maybe he needs to find another job, and I said that there would be a lot of heroes like him, and it's actually showing up just a couple chapters later. And well, I like how it does show that one of the heroes that shut down his agency, or maybe one of the sidekicks of an agency that shut down, was still willing to help these people, albeit reluctant, but he was going to do it had Best Genius not stepped in. But he did, so the guy didn't have to. There's not really much to say about this chapter because a lot of the flashback stuff we sort of already knew. Like, we knew that Hawks' dad was a criminal. We've known that since ending, really. We know that Hawks had as a child used his quirk to save people, and that brought the Commission's attention to him. And we knew that he had to cut ties to his name and family. We didn't know the stuff about his mother being the one to get him the Endeavor plushie, or his home life between his parents. We didn't. It's interesting that they didn't give the father a name, yet they didn't give the mother a last name. Like, sure, she'd presumably be Takami, but it says that she helped the father to hide from the cops, and not long after that Hawks was born. It doesn't say whether they had an existing relationship before this, whether they actually got married after this or anything, so Tome may not be a Takami, or she may well be one. But yeah, they didn't actually give the father a first name. But there's not really much to talk about with this chapter, so I'm just going to end it here. If you guys enjoyed it and want to talk about stuff that happened in this chapter, want to point out stuff I may have missed, or just give your ideas on where this next arc is going to go, comment them down below, and I'll catch you in the next one.